Hey, sorry for the delay. Welcome to the Transportation Mobility Advisory Committee. I'll read our opening statement, our new opening statement to get us going. For the past year, the Transportation and Mobility Advisory Committee has been meeting without an anchor location pursuant to Utah's Open and Public Meetings Act, and has instead conducted all meetings online. Notwithstanding the ongoing coronavirus pandemic and Utah County's moderate level of coronavirus transmission, the Provo City Transportation and Mobility Advisory Committee has determined to hold its meetings beginning May 20th, 2021 at an anchor location and online. Interested persons of the public can participate in the Community and Neighborhood Services Conference Room at the Community and Neighborhood Services Department with limited seating available, or online by watching the live broadcast at youtube.com/user/Provo Channel 17 or Facebook Provo Channel 17. Okay. Sorry, I gotta, 1 second, there's some background noise I gotta fix. Okay. We'll do introductions real quick. So I'm Clancy Black, TMAC Chair. We've got Joy McMurray, TMAC Vice Chair, and TMAC members Dave Arnold, Laurie Urquiaga, and looks like just 4 of us. And then also we'll welcome Dave Harding, our council representative. Thanks for joining us, Dave. And then welcome to staff and guests, of course. So Robert, you're there at the conference room. If there is public present and have comments, I assume you'll alert us and pass that on, or how do we handle that?
I'm just sitting in a dark room by myself right now.
Okay.
So,
so we're good. If the need arises, you let us know what protocol is.
Definitely.
And we have been doing that frequently.
Yes.
Okay.
Part of my therapy exercises.
Okay, so I think we'll dive right in then. Okay, so our item 1 is finalizing evaluation criteria for Center Street. If I remember correctly, I think we voted on the criteria and had a draft waiting, and we were hoping today to kind of do some scoring in a spreadsheet or something. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. I wasn't here last time, and so that topic one, that item 1 is a broad kind of placeholder to kind of pick up where you all left off last time. And then you were going to weight them today, have that discussion about that.
Okay. I know we were hoping to have the big projects list in like a spreadsheet format so we could start scoring a little bit and play with it. Is that available, or?
I have that as well.
Okay.
So let me just go ahead and share this.
Clancy,
Sorry,
while he's
guys.
doing,
I'm not sure what this comes.
while he's doing that, Clancy, do we have? Sorry, boy, I'm echoing. Do you have an idea of when we'll start meeting in person?
I haven't been told anything, but I'm curious about that also.
Crystal, for some reason, I'm not able to share this specific document. Clancy, do you want to go ahead and have the discussion on the weights while I work on bringing this up?
Sure. I found my notes from last week, so I'm going to share those. Oh, I can't share either. So we had discussed a draft weighting. I'm gonna paste this into the chat just because it's easier for everyone to see than for me to read a whole bunch. So if you look in the chat now, you can see the 4 criteria along with the proposed weighting. So it's 35% for pedestrian safety, 30% for convenient access to business, 25% for the aesthetics, and 10% for the interim design strategies. So yeah, while we get other things in order, this was just kind of our initial idea. Has anyone had any additional thoughts or ideas on this weighting?
I haven't.
Okay. I personally haven't either. I don't know that it's our final, but in my experience, it helps a lot to start scoring a few things and kind of see how they shake out, because then that kind of tells us if it's kind of matching what we think is most important or what our expectations are.
So the only thought that I have, and I was able to bring this up kind of in the context of a spreadsheet. I know that you guys discussed 35%, 30, 25, and 10. I just wanted to throw out, since you're doing a score sheet, would it be easier to do like a number score of like 4, 3, 2, and 1?
Yeah, so I think that's what we would do. We would rate each project 4, 3, 2, or 1 within each category, and then just weight them by these percentages for a total score.
Okay.
Is that what you're saying?
Excuse me. I think so. So
Okay.
I agree with you, that Clancy. Like, I think the best way to try this out is to just get started and give it a shot.
Okay.
Like, pick one, and this doesn't necessarily mean that you are ranking these items as far as a priority list. It's just evaluating, right?
Yeah, and today more or less will be an exercise just to see if our criteria are working well for evaluating the project. So yeah, let's just dive in. I guess I'll start, and maybe we'll take turns so that you guys don't just listen to me talking the whole meeting. So switching out parking signs and posts with standard, I think this was bases.
Yeah, so the check mark means this is one that's already going forward.
Yeah, and in fact, not only going forward, that one's already in. It was with the standard downtown, the new design on the parking signs that Community and Neighborhood Services has, and so those have already been switched out. So these ones on the check marks, I don't know if you guys still want to rank them, but they are well, except for the UDOT is looking at the signal timing. But the other 3 check marks, the other 3 that do have the check marks, they're already in. So we can still rank them, but but they're done.
Yeah. Okay. And those 3 were kind of the quick hitters that were easy to get done quickly and could have some effect. So I think that
Right.
So let's start with row 4 then. Create leading pedestrian interval at intersections on Center Street. So if any of you don't know what that is, that basically, it gives the pedestrians the walk signal first and gives them 2 or 3 seconds to start crossing before any vehicles would have a green light. And what that does is, if there's a driver turning left or right, it increases the likelihood that the driver will see that pedestrian crossing before they turn and hit them, because left and right turns are where a lot of head crashes happen. So that's what the leading pedestrian interval is designed to accomplish. So for prioritizes pedestrian safety and comfort while supporting multiple modes of transportation. I would think this one would have to be a 3 or a 4 probably for that, because it is very focused on ped safety and doesn't severely limit any other mode.
Nancy, is a 1 higher or 4 higher in this ranking system?
Oh, I am thinking a 4 is like high, a 1 is low.
Right.
I would tend to put that at a 4.
Wrong line though.
Oh, yep. Thanks, Joy.
Yes, sorry. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm at a 4 on that one. I don't know why that one wouldn't be a 4. Well, my vote is a 4.
Yeah. And this is where, well, maybe we'll get into this later.
This is what we're figuring out, right? The difference between a 3 and a 4. What does that mean? Yeah, yeah.
Right. And at work, I'm in the middle of a very similar process using scoring like this for something else, which is ironic. And we've been debating recently, like lead pedestrian. We haven't been debating leading pedestrian intervals, but when we're scoring things, a 3 or a 4, the debate is, do we score them relative or sort of isolated? So lower in the list, there are probably things that are more effective at pedestrian safety than this change. So does that mean this one should be a 3? Or because it is effective and focused on ped safety, is it a 4 regardless? I don't know the answer to that yet, but I wanted to mention that, and I think we can have that discussion more as we continue. Yeah, Dave, you want to add something?
Yeah, just my thoughts. I do this kind of scoring in my engineering work as well, and I would just say that theoretically the most something that would have the biggest impact on pedestrian safety and comfort would be at the top of the list, and something that has no impact on pedestrian safety would be at the bottom of the list. And then you basically just draw 3 lines in the middle. Is this in the top quadrant? If so, it's a 4. Middle, or that one quadrant would be a 3. Between 25 and 50 would be a 2, and between 0 and 25 would be a 1. Assuming we're going 1 to 4, unless it's 0 to 4. Anyway, the point is if basically it's a 4, I would say it's a 4, and so that way it is somewhat relative. Like the most impactful thing should not just be a 4, but it should kind of set what that top, the top of that scale is, and then everything is just scaled between it. That would be my suggestion.
So we're not just ranking them on their value in that category. It would be their relative value to other things on the list. Is that what you're suggesting, Dave?
I think so.
Okay.
So like scroll down, Robert, if you don't mind. Like there's okay, so like install rectangular rapid flashing beacons, row 17 there at mid block. That one, it's a little more direct than the lead pedestrian interval, and so I would maybe say it's more effective. And so maybe it gets a 4 and the other one's a 3. I don't want to change the 4 yet, but I think after we score a few, let's back up and look at them again and think about this. So let's keep going on this one. Great, leading pedestrian interval intersections on Center Street. So our criteria 2 maintains and supports convenient access to businesses and services.
So it doesn't enhance, but it doesn't cause any issues either.
Well, it slightly stops the, it reduces, we're favoring pedestrians over vehicle traffic. So vehicles will wait a little bit longer because of that extra time. There's only so much time in a cycle that an intersection has to service everything. And so this is giving a little bit more time to the pedestrian. So it'll slightly decrease the experience of the cars.
Yeah, by a few seconds every time.
But
What
does
is
that
the
make it inconvenient to access businesses
Right.
on the overall?
Because it would
Because I
also,
can see it being the cars, but significant number of the cars aren't going to those businesses anyway. They're just going through.
yeah.
So maybe that's 2.
Yeah, maybe. I'm good with putting a 2 for now.
it's certainly not solving that problem. So
Yeah. So this is so and looking at our next one, contribute to the aesthetics of the destination and enhances the downtown experience. It does improve safety, but we've already scored it on safety. So in terms of pure aesthetics, this
well, we scored it on safety and comfort, which I think that covers the experience. That comfort probably handles the experience part of it.
right. So it really has no impact, no effect on this item.
So it's going to end up scoring low.
So here's my thing is that if we're really wanting pedestrians downtown and pedestrians feel like they can go multiple blocks with less risk, that does, I think, enhance a little bit. Not much, but a little bit for the pedestrians. But it is a detriment to that for the cars.
And it's not the end of the world if a good idea doesn't score well in all categories, right? Because presumably other ideas may also only score well in one category. And if there's an idea that does hit 2, 3, or 4 of these things well, then it ought to have a higher score than something that only hits one of them well, right? So,
right, yeah. So, and yeah, I think you're 100% right, Joy. And it's not like we're not gonna rank it and say, here's the list, start at number 1. It's a guide to direct where we should focus, because something like this, maybe the score isn't high in some of these other categories, but this is an extremely low cost.
yeah, this is low cost, low impact.
So
Yeah, if I was to take your comments of both of you and try to use it functionally, maybe the individual rankings, we look at those high rankings and those become strong. If they only rank in one category, that's one criteria for them to become maybe a highly rated project. Whereas, so whichever ones is the highest in each category. Then what I heard one of you say is if they score high in 2 of them, they're even higher on the list. So maybe it's not the total score. Maybe it's their ranking, they're ranked high, and they still have a high score. Or so maybe there's 2 criteria to move things to the top of the list.
Well, and what we don't have is a practical category about cost. I mean, we have a cost indicator, but we're not ranking them on cost. And yet that's going to be a consideration at some point. If it's something like this that you could easily implement, it's not going to require any construction, and it does improve safety significantly, then that's a low hanging fruit, right? Easy to do. So I'm not sure, but it brings up some good questions on our rankings. I'm glad we're doing this, Clancy. This is great.
Yeah. I think it's also important to remember that this is iterative, right? Like this is just one step of the overall decision making of what projects you're going to recommend, right? I was listening to your conversation from last month, and I was really intrigued by, I think David Arnold said, there are certain things that you're going to be as objective as possible on, but then at the end of the day, there's going to be some subjectivity in what you actually recommend that we go forward and do, right? So I think that this is one of those opportunities where you're trying to be as objective as you can, but at the end of the day, you're going to take all of that information and make some very subjective choices on how much does something cost and really the bang for your buck and that kind of thing. So,
and on that, agreeing with you here, Robert, that this will help keep us honest. If there's a project that a group is pushing for that scores really low, it allows us to say, hey, we understand this is important, but it scores really low. And there might be outside factors that result in it still happening, but at least it gives us a barometer to say how it compares to our other options. You know, Rob, you want to share something?
Well, just as perhaps a suggestion to make this first iteration, because I agree it'll be an iterative process, but to make this first iteration go faster. Wow, and that wasn't meant, but just as a suggestion, I'll put it that way. Just as a suggestion that still keeps, because I think it, you know, there may be more difference between than just 3 scores, but maybe as a first round go at this. And keeping the up through 4 ranking, as a first go, it could be 4 if it's on the higher end, a 2 if it either doesn't affect, I guess it doesn't really affect, or at least it doesn't affect that positively strongly, and then maybe even just a 0 if it actually, some of these may actually detract, may score strong on one and then detract on the other. That could be a 0, and then once that first iteration is done, then y'all could dive down deeper into it. Is it really a 3 or a 4, or is it a 2 or a 3?
If what you said, I'd like to add to that. We might do a 2 to a -2 then.
That's what I was kind of debating.
That's what I was thinking
that's
too.
what you just described, is a 2 to a -2.
Sure.
Because we don't have a way. I mean, how do we indicate neutrality? It doesn't affect it one way or another. But some things, if it affects it negatively, how do we indicate a negative?
Yeah, and that's a good idea. I guess what I'm saying is that even if there's more difference to where you want to keep there's 4 or 5 different, either a 0 through 4 or a 1 through 4 range in the end. This initial one can just be the high end, the middle end, and the very low or negative end, whatever, as a first iteration, and then for the next iteration you can get into, is it really a 2 or a 1? Is it really a 0 or a -1?
I kind of want to try that. We go with -2 is really bad, -1 is kind of bad, 0 is neutral, 1 is good, 2 is really good.
I like that.
I think that's a good idea.
So with that, I would say this should be, I would say a 1, but I'm okay with a 2 if you guys think a 2 for safety. And then I would say 0 on the next 2 is my thoughts. But what do you all think?
I'm not calibrated yet with the whole list, so I think
Yeah,
1 is. I'm fine with 1, 0, 0, 0.
Lori, did you say what you wanted to say?
I was just going to say 1 or 2 would either work for me. I do think that it's low hanging fruit. So it's something I hope that happens.
Mm-hmm.
If the UDOT is okay with it, but I know that might be an issue with UDOT.
I guess it's actually quick to implement, so it doesn't require us to build anything. It's just a retiming in the controller, so it might fit into that interim design because it's so easy to go implement.
And maybe that's what I would tell you. If it's something that we can go test and try, we can go do that. This is one, as you think about these, I would put in there, that's maybe something that you want to go test. We can go try out. On the UDOT signals, this may be an issue, like on University Avenue on 500 West. But this is something that we could try on the city signals, Second West, Third West. This is something that we could try as just to see how it works.
So that could be a 1 in interim potentially.
Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, I think we're going 1 there, Robert. So let it be written.
I have so much stress in my job today. You guys are.
Let's go row 6 now. We'll skip our check marks. So install slow and 15 mph paint markings on street. I'll let someone else speak up first this time.
So that seems to me like it's another one.
I would agree with that.
They're noticed more than speed limit signs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know how much it's going to impact. I would agree with the one. No,
Pretty neutral here.
Yeah, I would think 0 for that one.
So do you use like a script font to make it pretty?
I know, I was going to say, what color are we painting it? Is it contributing aesthetically? I don't know.
Actually, the street markings affect the look of the street, usually if it's done well in a positive manner.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's
nice bike lanes, nice crosswalks. It adds to the, I'm not going to call it art, but it adds to that layering of the street experience. So if it's done right, I think it can enhance.
So there are specific engineering standards for text sizes, text fonts, text color, the color. There are both state and federal adopted policies for uniform traffic control devices. This would be considered a traffic control device. And so there are specific things that we would have to follow, that it would need to look like. The type of paint that has glass beading, there's a bunch of things that we do need to follow with that, though.
So Shane, would it just be the standard kind of like block letters, block numbers?
Yeah, and for this, what we would do is if this is something that we move forward with, we would put a concept plan together that would show what that would look like. So you guys could see what that looks like from a plan view. We have the ability to do that.
Yeah, that statement doesn't change my statement. Even just these standard traffic control signs, they do add to the character of the street. So I think it would contribute, or it could contribute to the aesthetics of the street.
My only concern with what I'm saying now is more about signs than pavement markings, but throwing in a lot of signs definitely makes it feel more like a street than a destination. And I think I don't know that pavement markings have the same effect, but I do feel that way about signs.
The thing I like about this is it makes it feel like it's been described as a pedestrian mall. It's a walking area. This is a strong statement that says that.
Yeah. So you think we should give this one a 1 then, Dave?
That would be my vote, is a 1 on the aesthetics.
Okay.
I think it will change. It could potentially change the character of the street in people's minds and even the way they look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And it puts visual. I don't know. It's a really busy street, so people may not notice it with that park. All that diagonal parking. It's a very busy street, so these signs might get lost. But
well, and it is possible that if this is effective, it might reduce the signage. So I'd be okay with a 1.
Yeah.
The busyness of
the
up.
If we can get rid of the up clutter, because we really want the businesses to be seen, right? The business signage. We don't want that competing with signs. I like that. I agree with that, Larry.
Dave Harding, did you want to add some?
Yeah, I'm trying to keep my comments to a minimum, but I love listening to your conversation. I totally agree with Mr. Arnold that if you've got freshly painted crosswalks and things like that, it really gives the area a feel of that it's well maintained. Whereas if you have a faded sidewalk, it starts to look tired, old, uncared for. I also agree with Mr. Black that more visual clutter signs just in general is a detracts. But I love the conversation about, is this actually a possibility of reducing some of those up signs? And I would say that this might have a slight, as far as aesthetics, maybe a slight negative impact. But the other part of that is enhances the downtown experience. And if it's effective at slowing cars down, I think that there could be a significant upside to counterbalance that potential slight negative effect on aesthetics. But anyway, just my thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm on a, this should either be minus 0.1 or plus 1 is where I am. I say we keep the 1 and move on for now.
Agreed.
Interim design, I would maybe think of 0. This isn't one you can really, I guess you can kind of test it with, but it's hard to get even test paint off.
Well, there is a little bit of cost. We can do it. This is one we can test. Just realize when we do, we may just test a few spots and see what happens. If it's something that becomes like, yeah, this is not something we feel is effective, or if there's something that feels like it's detractive, we have the ability to go sandblast that off. It does scar the street a little bit, but we do have the ability to do that.
You could just leave that one a neutral, right? I don't think it's super strong in that category.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. Paint bike sharrows in the outside lanes.
So this isn't really a pedestrian thing, but it does support the multiple modes of transportation.
Mm-hmm.
So I sort of give that a neutral myself.
But it doesn't harm the pedestrian safety because it gets, well, I don't know if we have bikes on, I haven't seen bikes on the sidewalks on Center Street. I just don't see many bikes on Center Street.
Yeah.
But this would get the bikes there, but I don't see that it would harm the pedestrian.
Right. And if it's not the bikes there, it would help the pedestrian, because I see them occasionally, but it is rare. Yeah.
Yeah, bikes are, just so you know, bikes are restricted on the sidewalk. Scooters.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I've seen scooters on the sidewalks. I haven't seen bicycles on the sidewalks.
Well, and if you have bikes on the roads, that helps slow cars down a little bit, right? Hopefully.
Yeah, I think so. I think that reminds cars of where they are. And
so is this with the current configuration, or is this because we have all of that diagonal backup parking? That's a nightmare with bike lanes. So I think we'd be asking for increased accidents if we painted bike sharrows with the current configuration. It's already hard when you back up to see cars. It's almost impossible to, well, I mean, bikes are harder to see. So I think if we did it with the current configuration, we'd be putting, I don't know, that's like giving bicyclists a false sense of security or something. So are we thinking about this with the current configuration or changing the parking?
I think we're evaluating it by itself. So current configuration. Dave Harding, you want to add something?
Sorry, I just didn't lower my hand before, but since you called on me, if you don't have a sharrow, I don't know why anyone would bike on Center Street now. Maybe in the future when these things, but right now you can't do it on the sidewalk, and it's pretty dangerous in the road. But if you did it, you would probably be at the rightmost part of the lane, which would be the hardest part for cars backing up to see. If it was a sharrow, would a bicyclist take the center of that lane and then be a little bit more visible to the cars backing up? Maybe, but yeah, all around it seems like a pretty treacherous route to take.
I know, Clancy, you're the commuter, Clancy. What is it?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Clancy. What do you think?
Well, when I do bike on Center Street, I always stay as close to the middle as I can. And by middle, I mean the middle of the road, like close to the dashed line, so that cars in both lanes can see me and cars backing up can see me.
So would a sharrow help the current situation, neutral, or harm it?
I mean, it's really hard because, yeah, if it's painted, maybe cyclists will feel more confident doing what I do and what I just described, which I think is better. The more visible you are, the more likely you won't be hit. I don't know, like it's really hard. It's really hard to know. I'm not sure. Javin, did you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what would be the possibility of having the green stripe all along Center Street, where it is a pedestrian mall, and that would be further out from the cars, so that would be more noticeable for vehicles to see as you're backing out. Is that an option?
Are you talking about striping the entire right lane?
Not the entire right lane, but like as you cross at the bicycle intersections, there's the green paint, 2 feet wide or so, but having that along Center Street.
The green paint, I think we had brought this up in a previous TMAC meeting. The green paint is for bicycle only lanes. I know, right, I believe that Salt Lake did it in a Sherrill lane for a short period, and they took it back out because it didn't work, and it's not according to guidelines.
Yeah.
But on that note, having those bike signs painted, I do think it would encourage cars to be more aware of and looking out for bikes.
Would it slow cars down?
I think it might a little bit. Which, we're scoring pedestrian safety.
Well, it's pedestrian safety and comfort while supporting multiple modes of transportation. Because we put both in there, right?
Yeah. I'd be inclined to. I guess I lean towards a 1 on this, but I see arguments for a 0 or even a -1. Does that mean we do 0?
Well, I think this would be a good one to try if we could find an interim way to try it. I don't know how we would do that. Can you go buy stickers and put them on the road and then unpeel them?
Oh,
I'm sure you can.
I mean, you can do a lot of things. The sharrows, I would put, if we go down that path, I'd make sure that we sharrow it so that it connects to the certain bike pass designated, like 300 West, I think is a designated north-south bike facility. So there's some things there we would need to consider on the proper placement, of these and directing the bicycles in the correct way. I think it would get us over to 200 East. So there would be some consider things. That's something we can do. Like I said, I think you guys have brought up both the positive and negatives of placements of sharrows. I think there's some positives. I think you're right. There's some negatives based on the existing condition, based on how much traffic and how much parking is there. So
I would tend to score this as neutral myself, because you've got sort of a balance between the good and the bad. Yeah. I wish there were, I think sharrows are isolated in a way. I wish there was a way to mark the entire lane as being a shared lane. And then that sort of takes away the sign part of it, but is still the visual indicator. Because I think if we had slow and 15 miles per hour and sharrow painted over and over along Center Street, that would be more of a more detracting.
Mm-hmm.
That would kind of get the street busy. But I don't know if engineering wise there is this lane is shared signal besides the sharrow.
Yeah, I say we keep it 0. I think so, because a lot of unknowns.
So in terms of things painted on the roadway, there's different ways that you can stripe bike lanes, separate bike lanes. There's, according to the MUTCD, but yeah, there is, if it's intended for cars and bikes, the sharrow is the painting that you use.
Okay.
Can the left lane be the Sharrow lane? I don't know. That's a question.
Yeah, it can.
It could. The difficulty there, in my mind, is number one. There's because of the parking in the median, you still have all the same issues.
I forgot it's on both sides, right?
And I guess same could be said of people turning right or left, but it's harder for a bike to then get across the the right lane to turn right. Although in a Sharrow, this is why we don't do Sharrows in or haven't done Sharrows in multi-lane streets is because if you do the Sharrow, then when you come to any intersection, the indication is stay in this lane, but then where do you go from there?
Right, got it.
So I'm having an idea here. As we move to the second criteria, I wonder if it'd be easier to score all of column F for everything first, and then just go one criteria at a time, because we kind of get our heads focused on safety. It might be easier to score safety for every project and then score access to business for every project and so on, just because then we're kind of in that space thinking about that. Whereas now we're jumping to G and I'm like rethinking like, okay, wait, what do we think about for this item? Does that make sense? Any thoughts?
Sounds great.
I would just make the caveat that maybe for today's practice run, maybe continue scoring safety for 9 and 11, and then maybe come back to number 8 for, so 8, 9, and 11, like finish out these 3 that you can see on your screen.
Yeah.
And then maybe have a discussion about how this whole process is going, and then leave some time for our second item.
Yeah. And Laurie, do you need to leave at 1 today?
I need to leave a little before.
Okay.
So, but I think if we went just like this section and did through it, we could get there in, 5 or 6 minutes.
Yeah, let's quickly do 8, 9, and 11, and then jump to our item 2. So
on nine, I need to understand where the sign can go. Can that go on the mast arms, or does it have to go to the side? What are the rules around a flashing speed sign ahead?
So are you talking an overhead? What do you? I guess.
Well, it just says install flashing 15-mile-an-hour ahead signs. Where can that sign go at 600 west and 200 east? What are the rules? Do those go at the side? Can they go out in the middle and be on the mast arm? Where can they go?
So they can both.
They can go either place.
Yeah, just keep in mind. Yeah, so like along Center Street, 600 West is a UDOT street, so that would have to get concurrence with the state on, because right now there is that overhead, the pedestrian overhead crossing signal that is on 600 West. So right now that does function at 200 East. Yeah, that's something that can be overhead or to the side. They can be both.
I would really like to send this message to the drivers. This is part of also getting the traffic to turn left and go around the street. This is a really strong message to do that, I think. Has there been in other places they've tried it? What are the negatives of this?
I know I've heard from others is just the distracting, feel. I'm trying not to get off safety here, but just distractingness of continuous flashing signals in your downtown area, right? Kind of that. But again,
on that
standpoint, probably is highly better. I mean, it's a very sight. You can see it. You realize, this something is going on here. So.
On that point, though, these would be on the edge of the downtown, facing out.
Yeah, right.
Downtown. So
I think his point was it's distracting to the drivers.
It could be,
or could be.
Well, the one thing that I would point out too is that even though it's not necessarily going to affect the aesthetics. There's a different feel, right, from the UDOT section west of 500 west than there is east of 200 east. I mean, a flashing sign west of 200 west is might be more, it might fit in a little bit better than east of 200 east, where you're just leaving a much more residential, you just passed a elementary school.
Well, and I think the problem is 600 west or 500. It's that 500 west. We really want people to turn left, and so yeah, that's the part I feel strongly about. Not so much the 200 east. That's not causing as much problem.
So Dave, because we're in a hurry, why don't you just pick a number for this one, and then we'll jump to the row 11.
If it can work, I would give it a 2.
I was thinking the same thing.
Okay. Pedestrian mall signage. I think that one could easily be a 1 or a 2. Definitely a 1, I think.
Definitely a 1.
A lot of nuance to how it's done, but we won't discuss that right now. Laurie or Dave, 1 or 2?
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what it means, so I'd have to kind of have an idea of what it means.
Yeah, it kind of depends on what we're talking about. We had at one point in another thing, and it may even be a different place on this, where it talks about doing an arch at the entrance to on both sides. And I like the arch sign better than I like the pedestrian mall. So I'd kind of downplay this one in hopes of getting maybe an arch as, entrance to the city, pedestrian mall, big obvious signal that this is a different location.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree that something like that would definitely rank a 2, whereas I think 1 fits here.
Yeah. And, pedestrian mall, vehicular traffic, turn left or whatever, would be nice. As a
2 or 1
businesses. Oh, Robert.
Sorry. So for this one, 2 or 1? I'm sorry.
1. So access to businesses. Sorry, everyone. I'm just going to fly through these, and you tell me yes or no, because I want to make sure we get through things before Laurie has to go. So we've got Sharrows, the flashing signs, and mall signage. I don't know that any of those detract, so I'd probably give all of these a 0, or all 3 of these maybe a 0 or a 1.
I concur with the 0.
Yep.
Okay. And then aesthetics. I think Sharrows would actually help, because it emphasizes that this is a non-vehicle space, a pedestrian or cyclist space. So I'd maybe give that a 1. And same for pedestrian mall signage. I think both of those could be a 1. Row 10 or row 9. I could see a -1 or a 0 for that. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'd kind of be leaning towards -1 for the flashing signs, although I would obviously weight the safety higher.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, we'll go with that. Interim design.
But it's not, okay, so the -1, that's to the traffic before it enters the downtown area.
Yeah.
I don't see that it does anything to the downtown experience itself. It's the cars. Hopefully they were getting to go around. So I'm struck. Why is it a -1? I see it as neutral, but why?
Okay, I'm fine with
you guys must have something in your heads. Larry, what do you have in your head that I'm not seeing?
Well, I just think that, flashing signs are obnoxious, but if we're trying to be obnoxious to cars, then maybe that's the right way to go. And I would say neutral. I'm okay with neutral.
I thought Rob's point was a great one, that coming from the west, we want to distract them. We want to get their attention. That's the whole point. And then coming from the east on a quieter road, we maybe wouldn't need it there. But I think that would be more of a neutral than a negative, because it's not actually in the downtown in either case as much.
I would tell you on 500 West, you do have the park there though as well. So there's kind of that park feel as well, which again, benefits safety. I don't know if how you feel about flashing near.
Well, we're even talking about it being 600 West. So that's like at the west edge of the park, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
but it would be adjacent to that park area.
Well, as they look at engineering solutions, they might be able to find a way to do it without flashing too. It's just signage. So maybe they can find a way to make it noticeable that isn't making the whole area go, bright. And so
Everybody, sorry. I want to make sure we get to item 2 before Laurie goes, and
Okay.
she goes quick and didn't quite make it. But I'm going to go ahead and stop this item here, and we'll jump to item 2 quickly before Laurie has to leave. If
okay.
you're ready for that, Robert.
Okay.
So Robert or Crystal, if I could get screen sharing privileges. So this is just a quick follow-up, and it's only going to take a couple of minutes, but it's a quick follow-up to what we had last time. And so it was called the same thing, and I guess I hadn't seen the same vision that I'm sure Crystal and Robert did when they labeled it last time, realizing that I needed to kind of create a bigger picture here. So if you recall, last time we talked about a proposed section for 1150 South. Let me see, pulling it up here, that it's just kind of a modified version of our collector road, where we'd have a larger sidewalk that would act as a trail, shared use path on the north side of 1150 South. And then we would make that up, staying within our typical 80-foot right-of-way section by taking a couple of feet of pavement, of roadway pavement, and then a slightly smaller planter strip on the side. After I had presented that last month, and in further discussions, realized that there's kind of a bigger picture that needs to be had of this. The Southwest Area Plan, which is one of the appendices in the general plan, shows that trail on the north side of 1150 South. This is kind of the street layout that was concept master plan street layout that is shown in our transportation master plan. At this point, we're thinking that it'll probably, swing up here, and this, this street will be a continuation of this lower street. It'll actually just kind of swing up and be one street, and so that's what that section was intended for. But in the Southwest Area Plan, it also shows a similar thing for Geneva Road, the extension of Geneva Road, which is 2050 West, showing a trail on the west side. And so the intent would be to use that similar section with that 10-foot sidewalk on the west side for that 2050 West section. And then need to work with our stormwater and parks team. Parks showed me what they needed for their section to create a section that will have a trail, a pedestrian trail that can also be used as an access on the west side of Dry Creek, and then working with stormwater to solidify, make sure that we've got enough width for keeping that an open channel and have that be the drainage for this area of town. And then, as we've discussed, as development has come in, the discussion was to make this not just feel unsafe by having it just bounded by two people's back fences and it's kind of closed off from the rest of the neighborhood. The intent is to require that the other side of the street would have their local street, one of their local streets, up against the other side. And so, so the intent is the only other, I guess, proposed trail system that is shown on the Southwest Area Plan is the one that we're putting in with the Lakeview Parkway. It is already up to Center Street, and we're just about to start on the bridge and roadway portion, which will go through, the construction will go through the end of or the fall of next year of 2022. But at that point, we'll have all of the proposed trail system that we already show along Lakeview Parkway done. So. So with that portion being done, the intent then is to move forward with making these sections a part of this Southwest Area map, which would, to get that adopted, since it is part of the general plan to have that adopted. It would need to go through planning commission and then through city council. And once those are adopted, that's really the thing that solidifies us saying to developers as they come in, saying this is the intent, this is a requirement of if you're building in this area. And so just want to bring that first to TMAC, make you aware of the intent and see if there's any feedback associated with that.
Thanks, Larry. I saw your chat there.
Okay, great. Bye, everyone.
Yeah, Rob. So, this is consistent with widths and cross sections that were already approved. Well, widths, because we just approved width in the general plan. Is that correct?
So it's
let me Ray, Rob. So what I've asked Clancy and the committee, I'd ask Rob to reach out to both Robs here, and what we need to do is we need to define kind of the cross section of each one of this trail system, what that needs to be. Is this a 10-foot path? Is there a slight change to the typical street section that is adopted in our in ordinance? Dry Creek, what does the cross section of that trail need to look like, so that as we get development out in these areas, we can show the developer this is what their responsibility is to build along their frontage. If it's not adopted in an ordinance or a street section, then there becomes an issue of what they have to build. They only have to build what is adopted in ordinance, what is adopted street section or trails currently. So we're trying to define all these trails, the active transportation system out there, because we're getting pushed fairly hard on development, getting development moving forward out there and holding developers to what they actually need to construct.
Yeah.
So my initial thought is that, I mean, in the transportation plan, these were neighborhood or citywide active transportation corridors, and each of those has specific options for the neighborhood or the citywide corridor. And so maybe you guys have already done this, but my thought is that, we start there and look at those, and that helps us decide what goes in each area.
Yeah. So to address that specifically, the transportation master plan identified typical cross sections, even with the exact pavement widths and with the typical 6-foot sidewalks. And there are different striping plans that could be used depending on what the need is for that particular collector road. For example, since these are what we were talking about are our collector roads. So the collector road is in an overall 80-foot right of way. The typical is 6-foot sidewalk, 7-foot planter strips, and then 50 feet of pavement. And what we're doing here, and what we have done in the past to do something that actually changes that hardscape, as opposed to just the striping. The striping plans or options that were identified in the transportation master planner. It's more than just that. We're actually changing the cross section a little bit, and every time, or the way that we have done that for other things. So, for example, on 100 West in the downtown area, is to have it identified in these neighborhood plans of saying, okay, that's our typical, but for this particular one, we're going to slightly modify it because of a particular reason. And the particular reason why we're doing it here is this trail system. So where our typical section has a 6-foot sidewalk, we identify saying this one, it's not just a active transportation plan, because our active transportation plan, we could use different things in terms of how we stripe it. So it's it could be a 5-foot bike lane, or it could be a bike lane in the shoulders. But this one, where it's a trail system, that's how we've done it in the past, is saying, okay, this is the trail would be then an off-street thing. In this particular case, proposing a wider sidewalk to act as that trail system. So that's it. I mean, in terms of what I'm understanding your question, that's the reason why we're proposing it this way.
So you're proposing that we adopt this modified cross section with more active transportation amenities, so that for these roads, it will specifically be done that way, not.
Yeah, there's not the options. It's this is what's going to be used on this street, because it was identified like I said, on the Southwest area plan, it's already identified as a trail system. You know, for me, it would be an off street, you know, an off pavement at least system. This is what we're trying to do is say this is how we're to make it consistent as it goes from development to development. Here's what we're talking about. This trail system needs to be, it's a 10-foot sidewalk on this particular side of the street.
Rob, I think that's consistent. I was part of the Southwest Planning Group that, you know, it was a lot of us, right? But I think what you've described is consistent with what was desired, what I remember hearing from all of us collectively. I think the 10-foot pathway, I think it satisfies, or it's what we were thinking. I don't know how else you would implement it with the right-of-way that you have. So it seems like a reasonable solution to what that Southwest plan had in it.
So Rob,
also your description around Dry Creek with the road and the, you're exactly right. We didn't want that to feel like a backyard. We wanted to feel like the public could go there and use it. And so again, your solution to put a road there on the ones, you know, and a trail, that seems to be consistent with what was the desired outcome with Dry Creek. Not make it, it's like when you go down, there's places on the Provo Trail and you feel like you're in people's backyards, right? And we wanted to get, otherwise it just won't be used as much. So we really wanted it to feel more public. And so I think your solutions are consistent with what we were, the intent of what's in that Southwest plan.
So Rob, you're not asking us where the trails should go. You're saying, can we do 10-foot sidewalks when we want to have a trail system along collector roads? Is that what you're asking us?
Yeah, for this particular one, is the Southwest area map shows where we want trail systems. That was already adopted. It shows where we want trail systems, and so I guess it's the input of saying, this is how we propose to do it. This moves it from an idea on the map to something that we can enforce, or that we can make sure happens as it develops out. Because just showing it on a map, at least in terms of our experience with developers, that doesn't, and in terms of legality, that we can't make it happen if we don't have an actual, well, this is what we mean by that.
It's not sufficient. Okay, one question. On 1150 South, as it's coming west and it hits Geneva Road, it looks like, I think you said the trail system is splitting and one keeps going up Geneva and one goes off to the left there. How are you going to manage that crossing over a collector road? How does that work with the trail system and the sidewalks?
So David, I see your hand raised, so let me answer these questions and I'll get to yours. But when on a trail system, it would be through a crossing. We could make sure that it's a marked crossing of being able to get across. As we looked at collector versus, collector to collector connections, our intent going forward is to mostly address those intersections through the use of roundabouts. So it would be wherever these two trails match up, it would be a wide enough crossing on that side of the roundabout that either pedestrians or bicyclists could use.
Okay, thanks.
And David, go ahead.
Yeah, just in the discussion about the Dry Creek Trail, I fully support the effort to not make it feel like it's not someone's backyard, to not have backs of properties with fences right up to the creek. I would just suggest that some consideration that it one solution to do that is to put a local road against it. But I hope that that's not the only solution that is allowed. For example, if a development wanted to go in and they wanted to place the required kind of community open space up against the river, and I would hate for them to be told, no, you can't do that. You have to put a local road right there. So that just that struck me.
And Dave, I think that's what we're trying to define. I think as I've asked Rob, that's what we want to define. What do we want to see there? Because we have certain developers and we've asked them to explore these things, but they well, you don't have anything that's defined. And so, all right, we're going to go define this in some fashion. We want to start generating that discussion here.
So can this be a I don't know what word to use, a park strip that the city could maintain? By park strip, I mean like a greenway along there, or is it going to be an HOA or whatever they're trying to maintain that? Which way would it go, David? I'm just trying to wonder, how does it get maintained?
Well, and that's the other discussion part of this, David, would be, is this something that the Parks Department maintains, right? If we're going to be asking for a trail system that the developer constructs, whether that's just a 10-foot path that is drivable and being able to maintain that dry creek. Really, it's a trail, but we can use our city vehicles to go in and maintain that. It's not necessarily a street. Then that would be something that maybe the city inherits. City takes on the responsibility to maintain that through snow removal on the park, and then also any of the landscaping may be the Parks Department. That's part of this discussion that we need to have.
I like David Harding's suggestion of not putting a road in there, because I don't think we need the road. It's got roads all the way around it. I really like the idea of that being a strip of green, as David described it. So I would encourage you looking at that option. I'm just agreeing with David.
Yeah, I think we'd initially put a typical cross section. Our Parks Department actually put something together for that, David, that maybe we probably need to bring to you and say this was the initial attempt at that. And I think that's where our starting point is. And I think that's what as far as engineering is concerned, that helps us think from development standpoint, this is the expectation.
So, and Shane, to answer yours, so I've talked with the Parks Department, and what they had so far was just the actual section of what they need for a trail system. So I still need to define, or we needed to define, I guess. I need to get with the parks and with community neighborhood services and public works, and I guess whoever else needs to be part of that, and define exactly what the full section from the edge of one right of way to the edge of the other right of way, that's including the channel, including the trail system, and any additional green space that we feel like we need. Still define what that is.
Yeah, because local streets, we typically on development, we let the developer develop their development out how they would like to see their local streets with the configuration of their property. And so we want to allow them flexibility to look at different things that may work for them, but at the same time preserving that space for what we would like to see.
Yeah. The way, and there's still some discussion that needs to be had, but the way that I see this probably moving forward from a green strip versus a roadway is probably here's the minimum that we would need, and then you either up against that, you either need to have additional green space that works towards your park requirements, or if you're not going to provide additional, you're just going to give us the minimum, then you need to have public access to it via roadway. So it may come as either this or this. You need to give us one or the other. So, David, go ahead. Or I guess both Davids have hands up. David Harding, I think you got your hand up first.
I was going to say there's three Davids on here, so sometimes when we throw out that, I get confused who we're referring to. I just wanted to say that I was afraid that perhaps Mr. Arnold misunderstood me, but I think what Rob just articulated was what I was trying to say. So if everyone understood what Rob just said, I think that's what I was trying to say. Just some flexibility in how the east side of that gets to develop. I was just afraid that we might be requiring that there has to be a local road, and as long as we're just requiring public access in an appropriate manner, I'm happy with that.
I was just going to mention that we've had DR Horton looking at this property right here east of Dry Creek, and we've thrown all of those options out to them. And of course, they've resisted pretty much all of the options. But one of the things that our stormwater has asked for is the ability to access the channel to be able to maintain it. And so that brings with it a little bit wider surface that may not be a public road, but it it's probably got to be around 16 feet wide to get, service vehicles on there to be able to reach down in and clean the channel and keep it clear. So some of these plans are probably going to have to be a little bit flexible and show maybe multiple options, kind of like you've been talking about, to be able to accommodate all these sort of things. This one is a special one. I think the 10-foot path on all of the other ones would be similar to what we've done on other facilities, but this Dry Creek is kind of a different one that we don't normally deal with.
My feeling would be similar. I live in Mapleton, and the trail up in Mapleton has I think it's a 12-foot wide, but it has gates on it. It has big gates that only allow pedestrians through through certain gates, but then has a bigger gate that can be open for vehicle maintenance. And so I would see something similar to that.
Which is, it's similar to what we have at multiple of the trailheads on the Provo River Trail also. I would agree. Is there any other questions or discussion?
I think DR Horton was in the Southwest planning meetings, by the way. So if they say they haven't heard of this, they're not being truthful.
Yeah, that's what kind of caught me too, is that the very person that was on the committee is resisting keeping that as an open area. So
right.
It's like, where were you?
Well, and that's what has helped spur this. Like I said, with the other roadways that we have, in different parts of the city where we have a particular cross section, whether it is this, on Dry Creek is kind of its own special thing since it's not along the roadway. But even when we've said on particular roadways, this is what we're looking for on this particular roadway. That's why it's always been done through adopting an actual section in the neighborhood plan, because that's how that's the agreed upon way, or I guess where we don't get pushback. That's that's where they say, okay, we can see you've adopted that. We actually will do it.
Hey, Rob, I had a question for you. Are you thinking on the 10-foot trails where we only have 80 foot of right of way, are you thinking going another 4 foot of right of way to 84 feet, or just narrowing up the planners by that additional 4 feet?
So it's a combination. The cross section that we talked about last time. Let me see if I can bring it up again. Is to take 2 feet off of the pavement and 2 feet off of the north planter, and then put I guess this is for 1150 South. There would be a similar section for 2050, but two feet off of the pavement, 2 feet off of the north planter, so that the north sidewalk could be the 10-foot trail.
Okay, so still the 80-foot right away.
Still the 80-foot right away. Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So it doesn't, right. It doesn't change the overall right of way. Like I said, we've kind of had options that keep the same hard surface section, but we can do different striping. But here, where we're actually changing the section itself, we're keeping it within this same right of way. But that's where we feel like this needs to be adopted as its area specific or street specific cross section.
I just wanted to say I love seeing these trail systems going in and the active transportation. I've had fun with my kids biking on the multi-use path on Lakeview Parkway, but last time we did it, it ended at the airport. So I'm glad it's going a little further. We'll have to try it again. That's awesome. Thank you.
So it's all the way down to Center Street now, and we'll continue up to 620 about a year and a half from now.
Okay.
Yeah, you're going to be able to in September, maybe even sooner than that, next year, you're going to be able to connect to the Provo River Trail.
Awesome.
So you can do a large loop within the city.
So, Rob, do you have what you need from the committee, or what do you need from us?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know that we need, unless somebody who's been doing this longer tells me differently. I don't know that we need necessarily an official vote. I just wanted to let you guys weigh in. And
I would think that we would just probably want a recommendation, Clancy. I think you guys are a recommending body. Maybe that we would move it towards the next phase. Have Robert Mills start moving that towards, Planning Commission and Council. Approval and a recommendation maybe from TMAC that you guys have looked at it and we're positive recommendation towards this.
Which we can do again. Just kind of wanted to give you an update, but maybe that's more appropriate when we all the staff gets together and comes up with what the cross section is going to be for Dry Creek. Then we can bring it to you guys and have it be, here's all the cross sections that we're proposing to attach to the Southwest Area Plan, and see if we can get a recommendation from you guys.
Do you have the cross section we looked, not for Dry Creek, the cross section we looked at last time that you're proposing for these? Can we see it again quickly?
Oh, sorry, I have been bringing it up, but maybe I did there's the share screen that actually shows you the screen. There's a share screen that only brings up the particular, and maybe when I thought I was going back and forth, I guess it wasn't going back and forth. So are you guys seeing that now for 1150 South? Yeah, sorry. I thought you were seeing that when I pulled it up multiple times.
We saw the map. That's okay.
So like I said, overall, same 80-foot right away.
Yeah.
2 feet less because our typical is 50, and then our typical is 7 and 6, and this is 5 and 10.
I think I asked this last time, but this doesn't have parking on the new sections, right?
Correct. And that's in our standards now, is that new collectors and arterials, when they're newly built,
any parking.
Don't have any parking. Yeah. We haven't been taking it off of all the existing ones. But any new ones we won't be adding it to them.
Okay.
So we can't really vote or anything, but I think we can give a verbal support or recommendation. I don't know. Dave or Joy, are we comfortable with that, or what are your thoughts?
Well, we lost our quorum, right? We don't have 4 anymore. So maybe Robert writes it up and sends it out. Yeah, I'm verbally for this.
Yeah, I think at this point, if you're verbally supportive of them moving forward, and then they'll bring back an actual cross section, all of the ones that they want to adopt, and then you can do a formal recommendation.
Yeah, next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds good to me.
Yeah, this looks like a great facility. Bikes, pedestrians. I mean, this looks great.
All right. Well, then I'll get with Robert, and we'll put something together to send to you.
Okay. Thanks, Rob. Robert, would you mind, the spreadsheet we were working on scoring, would you mind sending that to all the committee? I kind of want to play around with it just on my own time as we think about how to score these more. And if anyone else wants to, of course, feel free. And then next meeting, we can talk about it more and refine things a bit and keep going.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So, yeah.
Nancy, one thought as you're looking at it, we basically have the option of giving a neutral or a 1 or a 2, positive or negative. I wonder if we'd want to open it up to a 1, 2, or 3 in either direction, just to give us a little more delineation between levels of effectiveness in those different categories. Something to think about. I don't know. Otherwise, little bits of decimal are going to matter a lot as we're ranking things.
Yeah, I agree. It's worth thinking about that. I think we can go ahead and adjourn for today then, unless Dave or Joy or Robert, there's anything we need to discuss we haven't already.
I think this has been really, really good discussion. It's always exciting to finally get into things and start working through it and see all the little nuances that make it a bigger deal than we thought it might have been. So yeah, I'll send all of those out, and then we'll send meeting notes out. And maybe next time we can give an additional update on some of the scooter questions that you guys had from last time, and just follow up on all of those different things. So I'll send out all of those things. And then if you have additional things that you'd like to talk about, please let me know, maybe like a week before the meeting, so we can get that agenda finalized.
Okay.
Robert,
does anybody at the city know when we might be meeting in person again?
same question.
Is it just undetermined right now, or is
if you would like to. A lot of people have expressed a desire to keep the electronic meetings going. And so Robert is at our anchor location and the public can come there, but any TMAC member could go there also. And so what we have initially thought is that we would still allow for electronically for people to join. Because it may not be convenient to come down to the city building, or maybe one of you is traveling or something like that. So we could still do it that way. And those who want to come down to the city building can. But from now into the future, unless there's a change from the state of Utah or Provo City, and the pandemic worsens or something like that, and there's an order against meeting or issues along that line, we can go ahead and start meeting. So it might be worth, just as a procedural matter, just to get some feedback about your desires, and we could send that out in an email to the rest of TMAC members. And I think a lot of people do miss getting together. It's the communication's a little better, and we can get things done when we're in the same room meeting. I think it would be good to also keep the electronic portion.
I think especially in this case, because Laurie always has to leave a little bit before 1 o'clock, you know, making sure that we have that hybrid option is going to be really important.
So I like the hybrid option. Clancy and Joy and other committee members, if you're going to come, I'd rather come in person. I just want to be there by myself with Robert.
I'm not that scared.
Oh, sad.
Boom.
And I'm just down the hall from Robert.
Nobody comes in here. They're scared of me.
I would.
Well, all I was trying to express is I'd be happy to come in person if there's enough of us to make it worth it.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind in person either. It is hard if there's a few in person and a few digital. It gets tough. But if just Laurie was remote, I think that would work.
So I think what I'll do is I'll just plan on coming in person next month unless there's some change to your rules.
That'd be great. And we would plan on and anticipate, again, those who are coming down here in person will send out the menus.
Oh,
and you know,
I hadn't thought about that.
Provide lunch. And that's one of the difficulties with this meeting and a lot of our boards and commissions. People are volunteering their time, and around lunchtime or dinner time is usually the time we can get people together. And so we understand that difficulty. So we would start providing lunch again. Why don't we just go forward under the premise, we'll continue the hybrid, and we'll send out notifications. And those of you who want to come down, we'd love to have you and see you again and be in person. And we will provide lunch.
Okay.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, thanks everybody. We'll go ahead and adjourn and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.